Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth here. So I wanted to do this video in regards to kind of some dream analysis and just talking about a specific dream that I had, which was about a volcano. So dreams have always fascinated me. I think throughout my time of kind of spiritual journeying, I've always wanted to understand dreams from a different point of view that wasn't necessarily always from a psychological point of view, but and like from the Jungian theory, but also understanding dreams from a spiritual, I guess, like background or purpose. And I don't know, I have very intense dreams. So if any of you have any thoughts or advice on this, I would definitely love to hear what you think. But I've always just thought of everything in life just having a balance of kind of logic and spirit. So, for example, if one time I remember I watched a documentary on Hitler, and then that night I had a dream of Hitler, and some Nazis trying to shoot me, and I was dodging bullets from them. So, those type of things, or if you're really stressed out at work, you might have some dreams about your boss and your work. Like, there is a little bit of a logical perspective, especially when you are going through certain stages of your life. But I also think there's a huge spiritual component to dreams as well. Like, some of them could be a little bit more on the prophetic side, and or a lot of times like maybe your soul is really leaving your body and you're kind of up in the ethers having this, different type of experience. And some things might be trying to help your soul kind of grow and evolve in this life, and some of it happens through the dream state. So I remember years ago, back in 2016, I believe this was around election time or maybe after the election time, that I had a dream about a volcano. And the thing that I remember about the dream was that a volcano was just destroying the city. And so, the lava came through the city, people kind of went into ashes or just got covered in this stuff. And that's really the extent of what I remember about that dream. But I woke up from the dream really startled, and I was like, "Oh, Mount Vesuvius." And I never really wake up from dreams in a startled place, let alone actually kind of saying something in my dream. And so I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm like, I know of this volcano. And I ended up Googling it and then realizing that it was the volcano that erupted that destroyed the city of Pompeii in Italy during the Roman times. And so I was really, at this time of my life, I was also having a hard time living back in Seattle after living in Germany, just because I've explained it in other videos. There is a loyalty and a deep friendship and bond that you make with the German people, but also just some things in society are a little bit structured differently, and I guess like quote unquote normalized. And so coming back to Seattle was definitely a culture shock, because certain things in the city weren't open or available to the residents, as it was then prior to moving to Germany. So, for example, before moving to Germany, pot was only able to be used for medicinal use. And then when we came back to Seattle, it was used for recreational purposes. So it was just like the city definitely changed because Amazon at that point moved in. It seemed like everyone was smoking pot. The culture and the lifestyle is different. Like, Europeans definitely dress up and they're outwardly, I guess, probably a little bit more classier or presentable, let's put it that way. And you just come back here, and then, you just see everything with like pink hair and tattoos. And it just was like a little bit of a culture shock. And I do remember something like my ex-husband was like, God, this is like Sodom and Gomorrah out here in Seattle, because we saw people just falling down the wrong path, whether it was, starting with pot and it opened up to other things like going to techno parties to do a bunch of drugs, or you just heard stories about these like underground sex parties and things like that happen in Seattle. And so this has been a huge struggle of mine, and working as a personal trainer and a health coach, I've heard pretty much everything under the sun, and I'm not judging it. I just think that people are, they're very open with their body to have certain types of experiences. Like, I'm very open with my mind to have certain type of spiritual experiences, but I've never really been like open with my body in terms of just using my body as an experimentation tool for, I guess like earthly pleasures or, feeding the flesh or whatever like that. And so, anyways, this process that I've had a little bit of a hard time getting a grip on the West Coast, that dream was very startling. And then I just, read about Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii and kind of some of the stuff that was happening in Pompeii, where some of the biggest Roman generals were living, as well as it just being a city that was super decadent with brothels and prostitution. And so it just seemed like the sex and I guess if you call it from a Christian standpoint, the sin of man was just really high. And I ended up reading another blog. It was written by a Christian author who, when I Googled it, he talked about Mount Vesuvius and kind of the same things about how, the brothels and the sex life party thing was really big there. And he also talked about how natural disasters do, I guess, like cleanse out some of humanity that is living in a very non-godly way. And I don't like using those words because it sounds very hardcore, but it is a lot of the opposite of what I guess we're meant to do. Like, for example, sharing sex with somebody who you love. I'm not saying you have to be married to the person, but, being in love with somebody and sharing that experience with one person versus human sex trafficking, using people, going to brothels and just having sex with a bunch of women all the time. There's definitely like two different ends of the spectrum there between using sex from a very, I guess, loving standpoint, but from sides of the light versus sides of the dark, which ends up using people for enslavement and things like that against their will, using it to make money and things like that. So anyways, this blog, he also talked about how the tsunami that hit in Japan I think it was 2004, it was like in the early mid 2000s, about how that city was also had huge rates of human sex trafficking. And so you kind of look at this, I was like, Jesus. So I ended up having this experience with this dream, and like I kind of just had this intuition. I was like, I wonder if this is why the tech industry has moved to the West Coast, because we're all sitting on this fault line from Seattle down through San Francisco. And when this fault line hits, or when Mount Rainier blows up, it's going to be a very bad experience. And it's going to wreck and ruin some of the most beautiful parts of this country. But it's also parts of the country where you have heroin epidemics. And if you look at the history of Seattle, you can come to the city and take the underground tour for adults that happens at night. You learn and understand that Seattle's foundation of a lot of the income of the city came because of prostitution and parlors. You had women who were servicing, in the Victorian era, you had women who were servicing the rich men in the parlors. They were like, they had a good life for a prostitute, let's put it that way. And then you had the other ones, which were the pimps, just kind of running the cottages that were near the Puget Sound. And that's kind of where more of the lower income, lower life type of people would come in and just use those women in a little cottage, and those women did not have a good life. So I guess if you're a prostitute in the Victorian era, being in the parlor was probably a better life for you. So obviously I'm glad, and I'm sure I lived in the Victorian era. I believe in reincarnation, but I'm glad I didn't have that life. So where I'm going with this is I went to a dream analysis workshop with my friend, and we also phoned in with some people who are from Canada who are really great at talking about dreams from a little bit more of like a revelation type of standpoint. So they do kind of use some, I guess, Jesus principles or biblical thoughts, because the Bible does talk about dreams with, you had the dream with Daniel and King Nebuchadnezzar and things like that. So dreams do have an important part of our spiritual well-being and healing. And so the one woman talked about how this volcanic dream was a little bit more symbolic to myself in terms of volcanoes are about pressure. So there was this inward pressure for me to do inner healing and for spiritual domination to happen in my life. And so this is like a kind of a gateway of, you know, calling in spirit or Jesus to come in to help do the healing, and to also focus on God and spiritual healing, and not necessarily just focusing on the kingdom of God and not focusing on the shit that's happening in the world. And that's a really good reminder for me, because I am an Aquarius and I can't, you know, Aquarians are very philanthropic as well as humanitarian, and it's really easy for us to just like fixate and analyze on all the negative stuff that's going on and the corruption in the government and things like that. So she saw that dream of seeing the power of systems in the world and its destruction, but this is a focus for me to focus on spiritual energy and refocus on God, and try to not focus on the world. Now, I had another guy come into the analysis and talk about how he actually thought the dream was a little bit more of me tapping into what's happening today. So he said, you're seeing the culture and its destructive behavior. He said, you're seeing what is happening in the West Coast and kind of the sin that has come in. And he talked about how, that I was tapping into seeing the darkness that lies in people's hearts. And so whether that is self-destructive behavior or seeing people using, sex trafficking, which is still alive today. A couple years ago, a bunch of Amazon and Microsoft employees got busted of running a sex trafficking kind of brothel in a luxury high-rise apartment building in Bellevue, Washington, which is a really rich city. So these things are still existing today. It's just not happening in a little shack next to the Puget Sound. It's happening in your neighbor's luxury high-rise apartment unit. And so so he was talking about how I'm seeing what is lying in people's hearts, which is a lot of the shadow side of man of what's happening today. So it's a lot of the lust-driven type of thoughts and behavior, and it's also a lot of kind of the hate that lies in with us. So anyways, he saw this as an opening. He thought I was tapping into what is happening today in society, and he believed or agreed that a lot of people have kind of watched Seattle go on this downslope, fall downhill a little bit. The spiritual community has seen it through this type of eyes of looking at, the darkness of man. And then other people just think like, oh, we've lost our, culture and stuff because the tech industry is different. But regardless of what lens you're looking at this from, Seattle has changed and the West Coast has changed, and the tech industry has greatly contributed to that. But he saw this dream as you have the authority to pray about it, to kind of help pray and help cast out positive, energy or vibrations, to hope that people start to find their way back to the light and back to the right path in life. I've seen a huge shift in this city because I have always been tapped into people into like the Reiki and energy healing and massage therapy community, and a lot of those people have left. Some of it was because Seattle was getting too big and expensive. They were kind of sick of, homeless people taking a dump in their front lawn, that they ended up moving up to Bend and Bellingham, where you're finding that, kind of more community type of vibe. And Seattle's grown up and it has less of that community vibe. And it has a lot of different niches in it, which is very common for any city. But I think Seattle in its whole, many years ago when I moved here, was like the emblem of the city was Mount Rainier and the orca whale. And one of my first memories of the Northwest was when my ex-husband got a job in Tacoma. He got an apartment in Tacoma, and we were in Point Defiance Park, and there's a little area where there's a beach and a waterfront. And this was a Saturday morning. It was gray. It was kind of drizzly. It wasn't a great weather day. It was like a normal Pacific Northwest day. And there was a bunch of stand-up paddleboarders who were paddling along the sound. And it was basically a meetup group to kind of clean up the coastline. So they would stop, put their boards on the beach, and just pick up the trash. And I loved that. And I was like, oh my God, this place is so amazing. I'm like, I love that people actually care about the environment, and you know, they're actually making a cause by going out and picking up the trash. And now today, of what you see, it's a lot of this wealthy, abundant, hypocritical type of culture where it's like people will bitch about how disgusting middle America is, or how blah 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 this is and that, and all this like progressive politics, but they're not signing up or to do a cause. They're not getting on a, you know, getting a bus ticket and going down to DC or going down to the deep South red states to try to make a change. They're just sitting there bitching about it while, you know, they're enjoying, you know, their gluttony at all of these really amazing restaurants and cafes. So, you know, it is a different type of culture. And so I don't know, you know, eventually this fault line is going to crack. There is going to be an earthquake. We already had a minor earthquake in Seattle in July of this year. I believe it was July or maybe August, but I think it was around a 4.5. My cat meowed and I woke up, and then I felt my bed starting to shake back and forth, and I was like, what the hell are my neighbors doing? Like, it didn't even dawn on me that an earthquake was happening. I just thought, like, my neighbors must be moving a bunch of furniture to where it's like rattling my floor space. And yeah, I woke up and I found out that it was an earthquake, and I was like, God, I don't even know if I ever really felt an earthquake before. So I don't know. It's really interesting when you start to tap into dreams, and you're starting to see what's happening in your life, but also what's happening in kind of the collective environment, because that dream had a lot of symbolism through their analysis that it also, you know, volcanoes are about this pressure. It's like this pressure that also has to get out within me to stop dreading about all the horrible crap that's happening in the world and just focusing on what is right. And I don't believe in just nixing out everything. Like, you can't just stick your head in the sand and not care, because if everybody stopped caring, then nothing would change. There are people in this planet who are meant to sign up for the government to help make a positive change, or to be a good police officer, or to sign up for activism to bring awareness about animal abuse, and to be a journalist, to actually still be a fucking journalist and not some sellout to, you know, the media complex or the media corporations to just follow one stupid narrative without giving an unbiased, you know, point of view. I guess that's a lot of what I hope to do on this YouTube channel, was to provide a lot of unbiased points of view while trying to help people get them back on this path of being light, and to try to use this YouTube channel from an analytical standpoint to be like, this is what I'm seeing and this is what I'm expressing, and we can help, you know, each other through our different thoughts and opinions. So yeah, anyways, this is like a little bit of thought process on my analysis on the volcanic dream. It's kind of fascinating. I mean, hopefully people will start to walk into the light to where nothing like this will ever happen and destroy itself. But when you do understand spirituality, a lot of people in the spiritual community just think that everything has to be good. And I don't believe in that at all. I believe that this is kind of a fallen world. Planet Earth is an incarnation of polarities. It's like yin and yang. So when you have good, you're going to have evil. And it's always going to be that battle between the light and the dark, not only within yourself, but within this kind of worldly collective environment. And so maybe I'll be proven wrong one day, I hope. But I don't know, you look at human history and stuff's always kind of been the same. It's just different storylines and different characters. So I don't know. Let's hope this volcanic dream doesn't come true. But anyways, have a great day. If you have any thoughts or comments, please share. If you have any dreams you want to share, that would be really cool. And thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And have a great one. Bye.